Okay, hi everybody. We are going to call this meeting to order. And I was just going through, we have Jerry Lee, Mario, we have Dan, we have Stephen.
Yep.
And we have Phil. So we have a full council. Okay, let's jump in. We're behind 5 minutes. We'll catch up, I hope. Approval of agenda. Any changes to the agenda, please? Okay, then are you all in favor of the agenda as it stands? Please say Jerry Lee, yes?
Yes, thank you.
Mario,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Stephen,
Yes.
okay, and Phil?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Approval of minutes from the June 8th Town Council meeting. Any changes to that?
You want to go one by one, or we can not have people have
Stephen,
none?
if you have a change, why don't you let us know? Go ahead.
I don't have any changes, so I was trying to knock off people that don't have some, so we can isolate the ones that do.
If anybody has any changes, please say yes, and then we'll go. Okay, there were no changes to the minutes. Does everybody approve the minutes? Jerry Lee?
Yes,
Mario?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Stephen?
Yes.
Phil?
Yes.
Okay, minutes are approved. Thank you. Okay, we are at the point of presentations by residents. It's 7:37. Is there anybody on the line who is a resident who would like to make a presentation? If so, just please say yes, and then we'll figure out who it is.
Jackie, because Marion called in, I'm gonna unmute you right now in case you have anything to say.
I don't have anything.
Okay.
Okay.
Back on.
Thank you, Marion. So it
Hi,
sounds
this is
like
Marisa.
Oh, hi. Hello, Marisa. Marisa?
Yes.
Okay, Marisa. Go ahead, Marisa.
Okay,
We try to keep this under a couple minutes for
okay,
the
great.
person.
Well, I'm just out here with the sidewalk project. I know this is a big topic on the agenda today. And it's definitely continues to be a big topic for us. You know, it was formerly just such a picturesque street on Claremont. And I know there are a lot of big things happening in the world. There's pandemic, social upheaval, undermining of our democracy. There's a lot going on in the world. So is not the biggest thing. But it would be really great if this could be brought to a close. And I understand the current plan might be to wait to do kind of the backfill and the filling between the sidewalk and the curb, which is currently looking like this, until after the whole town sidewalk project is done. But I would really strongly urge you to finish this first. I think it is not a good use of town and state resources to let this contractor continue to do the job that the way they've been doing it, which last week meant they showed up to work for part of one day. And I think the town really needs to hold them accountable and make sure that they finish this work before any other work is started. I know the mayor has put in so much heart and effort into this and worked incredibly hard, but this has been, from just seeing it from our windows, a very tough contractor to work with, and they haven't done their job yet. And I would really ask you, please finish our street before you let the project continue, because it's just too much. I mean, this is not, we want in Garrett Park to have this junk out here, you know. For the first time in 2 years, we found a mouse yesterday in our front yard, which I think probably is from just all of this junk out here. And I just think it's dangerous and not a good use of resources to continue in this way. So please try to finish this project before moving on to the rest. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Marisa. We are, as we speak, really doing a little bit of a reorganization with Patriot, which I can speak to when we get to my update. So if you want to hang on till then, that's fine. We are doing everything we can to get this thing done. As you know, I want it done too. Okay. Is there anybody else who is a resident that would like to give a presentation? Okay. I think that closes that session. We are at 7:41 right now. We're at an action item, and we have demolition permit request for 10938 Claremont. And Councilmember Peskowski, would you like to take the table?
Sure. Yeah, I can probably hit it real quickly. Not sure if anybody else joined. I think George Martin said he might join. I may want to say where, but yes, okay. So I'll leave it up to him if he has anything to add. But basically, this property, it's 1.5 lots in the original town plan. What's up is raising the existing one-story home and then putting a new home on one of those 1.5 lots. So using the one full lot, not any of the half lot. This property is not in the county historic master plan district. Actually, that district skirts around it. The properties, however, that are kind of around it, across the street and next door to the left, if you're in that house, they are in that county district. So the Historic Preservation Committee in town met about this last week. When they put together a report, they don't oppose the demolition. What they asked for is permission to photograph and document what's there now for the archives, and also to offer any kind of assistance that owners may be interested in as far as consultation. You can't beat the price at zero on trying to help get that new home to be as compatible as possible in with its neighbors. That's just an option for that owner. Just a little side note on it, the development will have some effect on the stormwater that collects on that block, and we're already working on that block with a new outfall into Porcupine Woods. So I think it's probably just important to note it, even though the town doesn't really have any laws about stormwater property, we don't have any laws about stormwater on private property. And then we don't really have any review authority or anybody kind of reviewing it, but I would just kind of flag it for consideration that property would be ideal if it's either meets or exceeds all of the county regulations for stormwater, so we're not overtaxing the pipes that we're already trying to work on over at Claremont. So that's basically it for me. I don't know if George had any comments, or if maybe Marion did. She was in that meeting with HPC.
I have a question if nobody else is speaking. Is that George or Marion?
I just unmuted Marion.
Okay. Did Marion or George want to add anything before I ask my question?
It's also, the property is also opposite the triangle that we've been eager to ensure remained as part of the sweep of the roadway. Although the house itself looks ripe and ready for demolition, the property is placed in an interesting location and deserves, at least encouragement that it be properly designed.
Okay.
Thanks for bringing that up. I should have mentioned that. It is true. It's a very important kind of part of that area of the town's plan, and the town's plan, as we all know, is fairly unique. So,
Stephen, you said that the house on 10938 is on 1.5 lots, and it's a 1-story. I'm sorry, I haven't looked at any plans or anything, but you said they want to raise, I think, partial house to 2 stories, and is that right, or is it on just one of the lots, half the lot? I'm not sure where that is, and how is
Yeah,
that in respect to the triangle when it faces the triangle? I mean, where are we talking a second story goes?
Yeah, it literally faces the triangle, so it's almost exactly opposite the triangle, and it's pretty close to where the existing house is. The issue that's just a little bit unusual with this one is there were, coming around the triangle from where the Grafsheims are, there were 3 lots, including when you get up to where Barbara Collier's house is. So the lot that's in between is kind of half owned by the properties left and right of it. So what's planned for this house is it's going to go entirely on the lot that's closest to Grafsheim, leaving the other half lot as is.
Okay. And I have a question about the stormwater management. Yeah, I've been asked, or Andrea's been asked, if, there is anything in the town, ordinances that we have any mandate for providing a stormwater management plan by the homeowner who does any construction. And I think I've just heard that you say that there really isn't anything we have in our code, town code. Is that right?
Yeah.
So how do we ensure that we can, get maybe some better handle of what might be a stormwater management issue there?
Yeah, I didn't think that there was anything, and I took another sweep about it, looking for it. Any mentions of it, I think about a week ago, couldn't find anything. It's probably an important thing for us to kind of figure out how to address, because what we really rely on is the county rules. And they're usually pretty standard on what they're asking for, but sometimes they do grant waivers on things. If it can be shown that it's a hardship, or a case could be made that it's a hardship.
So Stephen, the county does require some kind of stormwater management plan or mitigation plan by a homeowner who's doing construction? Okay.
Yeah, any new house or anything that's, I think it's replacing 50% or more of an existing house, or adding on 50% or more in addition to a new house. They're required to send in a measured site plan that shows how tall it is and what the grades are and the stormwater plan for it, generally looking for dry wells. But I think other methods can be done. So like on my house, we did, instead of doing a dry well, I wrapped it in plastic. So it becomes a sort of a cistern for stormwater. And I have a pump on that so I can pump it out and water the garden with it. So that's an option that can be done with them too.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions for Steve?
Yes, this is Jerry Lee. When we issue the permit, will we be able to provide any guidelines such as advising them to protect the town trees out front? Because already during their pre-demolition work, they've damaged. And while we would like to offline work with Andrea on the pre-application process to advise applicants about tree protection, for this particular case, it would be good if we could put some advisory notices in the approval letters or whatever documents are sent.
Thanks for bringing that up, Jerry Lee. I meant to mention that too. And if there is a mention on the permit application, I believe it's just a statement that says this note, something to the effect of note that the town is an arboretum, but that doesn't tell you what that means. Probably need some other way to kind of see. I think what really kind of triggers things is if there's like a new driveway, like this one does have a new driveway, or if there's going to be new utilities or things like that, where it could really be digging through that tree zone.
Right. Yeah, and I
The
think
kind of thing
we work on the application process to improve it for the future, but since there's still work to be done here that could put those trees in danger, it would be good if we could, when we issue the permit, put in some advisory information about protecting the town trees. Can we do that, Andrea? I guess it's a question for Andrea than it is for Steve.
Yeah,
Yep.
I think we can do that. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Surely.
This is Bill. I've got a question. How come it's going on one of the 2 lots, the other lots being half a lot, and how come there isn't a requirement to actually replat it so that it's a single lot rather than a lot and a half?
my understanding was that there's no requirement if you're not building on those two.
So basically,
George was looking into that. Yeah, as long as you're building on just that one, like they're building within all the setbacks, like front and side and back on that one lot. So that other half of the lot could eventually be sold and could be potentially joined with the other lot and make a buildable lot.
yes, that's exactly what I was thinking of. If, in fact, it's enough to make a buildable lot.
Yeah, I think it's, I think the lot and a half, I can't remember the square footage, but I think it's more than kind of like the typical lot around town is like 10,000 square feet. I think the one lot that's being built is bigger than that, and half lot, if it was joined, would also be a little bit bigger than the average.
There's not a way to cross the require, right? Because you're thinking that since they're not crossing the lot line and everything else works out, they wouldn't even need that second, that half a lot. So therefore, they wouldn't have to go ahead and replat.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything that requires that. So that's up to the owner of that lot to use it as they wish.
So, hey, this is Mario. So does the stormwater issue have to be resolved before demolition? We can move forward, because it's really important that we have clarity on this.
Yeah, and the stormwater issue, it's tricky, and we don't really have anything on the book, so I think it's kind of a good reminder of have a discussion. Should there really be something on the books for Garrett Park to guide stormwater? I think there's the one mention that's in the ordinance is something about that curbs are supposed to guide to inlets, which is kind of obvious.
Stephen, this is George Martin. Can I step in on this?
Yep.
In response to the stormwater issue, the site plan that they submitted does correspond to the requirements of Montgomery County, and it has 3 dry wells. So the downspouts and gutters are fed to 3 different dry wells. There's also notice of silt fencing for during construction. One of my only concerns is in that regard that, and this is something to keep an eye on, a portion, not a huge portion, but a portion of the silt fencing is on the property line with the Grefsheims. And ideally, you like to see silt fencing back from a property line. And that's just something, given the location of the dry well, is necessary, but probably something when they start demolition to keep an eye on, make sure it's done properly, make sure they have plenty of hay out there, and they're not letting any site wash go into the adjoining property. With respect to the lot, the existing house that's being demolished sits completely on one lot. By deed, that property owner has part of a second lot. Now, the ordinance does call for replatting to a single lot if the house sits on 2 lots, so it takes up 2 lots. The existing house is sited on the one complete lot, and it has setbacks as have been required by code at that time. So there's nothing in the ordinance that requires a homeowner to replat the entire lot. If the house straddled that lot line, you would have to replat it. But in this case, it's a standalone 15,000 square foot plus lot in and of itself.
Okay, thank you, George. I think that actually confirms what Stephen was just telling us about replatting. I think for the stormwater management controls, that will take up on another item another day. So it's great to bring it up though, Stephen. Okay, is there anybody else who wants to ask a question before we take a vote on this?
Can I, this is Jenny Danik. Can I just add something to what Jerry Lee said about the tree protection?
Yes.
Again, the town ordinance that covers protection of town trees is pretty lightweight and fairly broad, vague. Again, we would rely on the developer to follow what the county requires, which is a real tree protection plan. That defines the critical root zone around the trees in question, and follows through on many of the measures that the county would require. So I just wanted to reinforce what Jerry Lee said about, making sure that the builder is on notice for the specific ways that we expect the town trees to be protected. And then second of all, in the future, talking about stormwater management, strengthening our town ordinances, that we do the same for the town trees.
Okay, well noted. Jenny, isn't the townwide comprehensive arboretum plan, it speaks to the tree protection, doesn't it? And is that something that, while we may not say it's enforceable, at least we have that as a guideline to issue to prospective new builders?
Correct. We do have ordinance 716 that covers the trees, but it basically says, thou shalt not damage the trees, and if you do, we'll fine you $50. So
right, I was referring to the comprehensive.
Right, I was going to get to that. I was going to get to that. Arboretum plan. What the Arboretum plan did was say, this is what you have in place now, and they made recommendations on ways that the town could expand and strengthen the ordinance that they currently have. So, it was in the what's in the Arboretum plan is in the form really of recommendations for what we need to do to improve it.
Okay, that's great. Good.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you. I've got one kind of basic question, and I don't mean to belabor this subject, but yeah, I think it's kind of come up before. I'm not sure anybody's ever answered it. How do we? Who's the person that has to be ensuring that things are being built correctly, or that we're, in terms of, tree protection, in terms of silt fencing, and all of that? Who's really supposed to be looking over their shoulders? Is that somewhere in the town office or committees, or any ideas? I don't have any. Who would, as Stephen, you had mentioned, it would be good to keep an eye on. Who should keep an eye on it?
That's a good question, because I think there's nothing real specific about it. I think it's kind of expected that the town manager would do it, but there's already a lot of other stuff to do. So nobody really looks at it now. Usually when issues come up, it's like a flag, like kind of like flagged by a neighbor, and then in the past, like town manager or somebody else has come out to take a look at things, but nobody does a real like kind of routine sweep. So.
Okay. Well, let's talk about that on another day. Okay. But keep that. That's something we ought to tackle.
We got a lot of flags here. So.
Yeah. Okay. All right. If there are no other questions or discussion, would somebody like to make a motion, please? And I hear no other questions or discussion, so let's go ahead.
I can go ahead and move. I can move to approve or allow the demolition of this 10938 Claremont Avenue.
Okay. Is there a second?
I can second it. This is Dan.
Okay, Dan, thank you. And is everybody else in favor?
Yes.
Okay. Jerry Lee, yes. Mario?
Yes.
And Phil?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, everybody. All right, it is 7:59. New business. Shall we go to status of capital projects? And that I'm going to punt over to Andrea, please.
Sure. So wanted to give an update on some capital projects that came up at the last meeting and that have come up over the last couple meetings. So I'll start with Oxford Road repaving. I talked to the town contract engineer about the information that council requested, and so he's working on that, what was discussed at the last meeting. The only, I'd say, thing of note is that he also will give, as part of his cost estimates, the cost not only for road repaving, but the cost for patching along those various blocks that we discussed. The second item would be sidewalks on Oxford from Montrose to Kenilworth, and then Waverly from Montrose to about the Kenilworth Triangle. So the town engineer, again, is also looking at those cost estimates, filling out the chart, the information that council had requested and that we discussed at the last meeting. And then the third item would be Rokeby Stormwater. So the town engineer sent the cost estimate solutions for this late last week. Mayor Kaki and Chuck Berry, who chairs our Stormwater Committee, and then Mario have all seen this. They will share this information with the impacted neighbors. So if there are folks on the phone that are kind of waiting to see that, they just got it. So give them some time maybe. This is procurement sensitive, so I'm not going to get into specifics with that tonight. I'll leave the update a little bit shorter, but council can expect to receive some additional information on proposed next steps for this, I think probably in the coming days, if not, maybe week or so. But I think we'll probably talk pretty quickly on this one.
So the council will get a copy of like the scope, the drawings, and the price estimate.
Yeah, I mean, as far as next steps, yeah, council would understand what the cost estimate would be and what the scope would be going forward, and then what would be the, again, kind of proposed next steps there.
I think what we've done in the
Is there a
past,
design
though,
drawing, or?
I'm sorry, Stephen, I think what we've done in the past, though, we have not distributed them by email. They are procurement sensitive, so even the drawing itself could be a competitive advantage. So we don't want this stuff out in the public domain.
So how do I get it?
Yeah, how do you get it? Yeah, well, we'll talk to Mario. We'll talk tomorrow and see what we can do. If we have to do it this way, yeah. Just to be mindful, we can't share this. Okay, good point.
Yeah. I mean, it's understood it's a procurement sensitive, but I don't think there's any history of council sharing things out.
Yeah,
the only thing I can remember being shared out was all the.
I'm sorry, we did it with the sidewalk project, but I think what I just said is to repeat. We'll talk to Mario and Andrea and see. That's probably what we'll have to do. Stephen and I said it was a good point, so we can move on that. We'll most likely distribute it. Just has to be kept close hold. Okay. Any other questions on the capital projects?
What about the extension of Kenilworth?
What about it?
We talked about it at the last meeting.
Yes, and you've gotten the emails, so we're not doing it.
Kathy, I haven't seen an update on this one. Is there information to share?
You were copied as well.
I don't think so.
I think I think I'm guessing the email you're referring to. I think only Phil and I got that. But maybe it's not worth dwelling on in this meeting. I think it would be too long of a topic, so we'll just let it go for now.
Yeah, it's pretty much overtaken by events, Jerry Lee. There's a lot of things that really are lacking to be able to even go forward. So, we can talk afterwards if you like.
Okay, if you're not proposing to finish the extension, how are you resolving the ADA ramp at the end of the sidewalk from current design?
Yes, that's been a question I have posed to SHA. And, at this point.
Excuse me for a minute. If you're not talking, please mute your phone because I hear dogs barking and people clanking around and so forth. Thank you.
That's me. I'm going to move.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So, as it is right now, the original drawings do have it going into a driveway. We had talked with State Highway that this was what was not acceptable according to District 3. and that we may have to end up putting in a ramp wherever it is ending, independently of a driveway. So I'm still waiting on word whether now we even have to still go with a ramp or if we can still leave it going into a driveway. And I hope to get that answer maybe as early as tomorrow. Any other questions on that? Okay. Let's move on to townwide composting survey. This is Councilmember Bennett. Time is 8:06.
Hi, everyone. Thank you to Joanne Schmader for setting up the townwide compost survey and conducting it on our behalf. We had 121 responses. That's approximately 1/3 of the households in town, maybe 1/4, close to that, around 1/3. And we did it all by electronic survey, and it was run for 2 weeks. The results showed that currently at least 18 households use a curbside collection service already and pay between $20 and $30 a month for that service. If we were to consider working with a vendor to establish a townwide service, informal inquiries with a couple of local vendors and talking to nearby towns show that the town could potentially contract for full curbside service for potentially as low as $9.50 per household per month. Or we could get a lot lower price if we wanted to set up a single town collection point where residents would bring their compost to that point and the service provider would just pick it up from that single location. That could be approximately half as much total. And then all of the services provide locking bins, and there are usually a variety of sizes offered depending upon the need of the household. And there's an initial setup price for those bins that either the town could provide or subsidize or the homeowner could provide. In general, in terms of the survey results, the key questions were whether residents support the town of Garrett Park paying for a subsidy, and 79 said yes, 79 of the 121, and 40 said no. And would you support cutting town trash collection service to 1 day a week in exchange for 1 day of compost collection? 65 of the 121 said yes to that, and 53 said no. They're not percentages, they're numbers of respondents. There were a few other questions, and Andrea, I have no problem if we post the full results after the meeting on the website.
Okay, sure.
At this time, I'm not making a specific recommendation. I think we should get this information out, and I propose, there were so many comments that had questions about how a service could work, what the benefits are, suggesting we do some additional research about the costs and benefits, because there were some concerns about trucks coming into town and picking up collection, perhaps setting up sort of a cost environmentally to the composting. So on the whole, I think this is good information. I'm really glad we did this because we have more information about what level of interest there is in town than we did before. But I do think we could use some time to get more information, and particularly given that we have an unclear budget year ahead of us in terms of revenue, it would be good to perhaps work with GPCAN to conduct some additional research and education in town. And when the next opportunity for the trash collection contracts to be renewed, that we could work with Andrea to look at potential options at a future date. So that would be my recommendation, that we continue with research and education and get more input from residents on this topic going forward. Any questions?
I will make one comment is I like your survey, and you had some good results, but it seemed like several of the comments, or a number of the comments, were quite heavily against cutting that second trash collection.
Right, I didn't count the exact comments, but in terms of the number, that the raw numbers of people who said yes to no to that were 65 to 53 on the second trash collection.
Yeah, it could be one of the things where people don't totally pay attention to it. Like, they may feel like if you're really interested in composting, you would look at it, but if you're not as much, then you may not have paid attention to it. I wonder if things might be different if there's more time and people really know kind of what the results were and what's on the table.
I think you read my mind, Stephen.
Might get different results.
I was going to say the same thing. I think it's possible that people saw that it was a survey on composting, and that perhaps they wouldn't be interested and wouldn't have opened it. But if there was a word if there had been a preface that this also involves the possibility of losing one day of trash cycling, then they may have opened up the survey. So that is a question about possibly having to do another survey or something.
That sounds not me.
I don't know who's in the background, but there's some noise. Anne, are you trying to say something? Because you're muted. I can't tell. Andrea, are you able to unmute Anne?
Yeah.
Andrea, are you there?
Yeah, for some reason, feedback.
That noise is usually a feedback from somebody having two devices on the meeting at the same time.
Okay, all right. Okay, okay, sounds like it's kind of quieted down. Okay, so we'll wait to hear more next steps. Okay, Jerry Lee?
Yes, thank you. And if
Okay.
anybody has any additional thoughts, feel free to send me an email. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you for doing all that. Next item, 813, temporary backfill for town manager. I think Town Manager Fox, you might be the best to lead this one.
Sure. I know it's different because we're all on video and not in person, but if you saw me in person, you would know that I'm quite pregnant right now. So wanted to talk about some temporary backfill for my maternity leave. So I will likely be out on maternity leave from October through December. And as Khaki and I discussed, we agreed that we would need someone to backfill me while I'm out. And I would like to have some overlap. So we're probably talking about 16 weeks or so. And since we are doing a recess on the August meeting, wanted to bring it up tonight so we can, if you have any questions, we can answer them. And so that Khaki and I can move forward. We are looking at probably somebody 30 hours a week, possibly up to full-time. We have some questions out there that we need to ask about that. This would be a contract temporary position, ideally starting in early September. I can give a range on cost if that's wanted by council, but again, because it's procurement, we want to be sensitive to that. There's a healthy amount of carryover in FY20, which I'll talk about a little more in my manager report, but over $420,000 currently estimated. That will lower a little bit with some FY20 bills that need to be paid. So we could reallocate some of that carryover. Until then, we can transfer from the existing contingency line item in FY21. So just wanted to bring this up and see if anybody had any questions.
This is Jerry Lee. One question I have is if we have a contract employee as the town manager, doesn't the town manager supervise the other employees? How does that work?
Yeah, I think it's, something we'd have to work through. One of the things that I think would be important would be, if I can find somebody that can backfill me, and I have a couple folks that I need to talk to. But if I can find someone that's an experienced manager that's, done quite a bit of probably everything, I think that would be helpful. But I think that person would have to work, closely with Khaki as well on issues. I also won't be completely unavailable. Khaki and I have talked about kind of the limits that I have or parameters that I have, but if something major came up, I would be, available to discuss. And I think personnel issues would come under that category.
And this would also cover your town clerk position, right?
Yeah, it'd be the manager, clerk, treasurer duties.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And the upside that I just started a couple years ago is that the job description is, still pretty fresh. So I think we have a good idea of, it's pretty easy for me to articulate sort of what those duties would be, and that job description I think was accurate.
Is it going to be challenging to find someone that can really step in at your level, or that is going to be able to do it temporary, or is it not expected to kind of get there?
Yeah, I think I'll know more in a couple weeks. I wanted to, Khaki and I wanted to make sure that we brought it up here before kind of moving forward. But there are some programs out there. For example, ICMA has a whole program of retired managers that I could tap into if needed. There's an MML job board. So there's various kind of routes that we can take if it is difficult. But again, ideally, I think someone that has a good amount of experience would be really helpful because they will have seen a lot of this kind of stuff. And around here, it's not so atypical for managers to be in dual roles. So hopefully they'd be familiar with that as well.
Okay.
Hey, Andy, it's Mario. We can also probably go back to some of the resumes that were submitted for when you were applying for the position a couple years back. You never know if there was other folks, and I wasn't obviously involved in the hiring, but that could be a solution. And certainly ICMA is definitely a go-to. Yeah, I agree with you.
And I would defer to Khaki on that, since obviously wasn't part of that process. So I'm not sure where folks would come down on that, but.
I would steer clear from that personally. I know Khaki and Phil and I were all there.
And I think it was all considered proprietary, so I don't even know if we've got copies of that stuff, but it was all considered proprietary. You'd have to go back to the headhunter basically to get any information or do something like that. But it sounds like Andrew's already got some ideas to begin with.
Concur on all points, Stephen and Phil.
This is Dan. Would we, and Andrea, your approach sounds sensible. And, again, like I get it why, especially someone stepping in short-term experience is key. Would we also be able to just kind of like post a notification somehow, like communicated in town? I just wonder if there's anyone who, maybe is out of work, or who's like been furloughed due to the whole COVID situation. And I don't know, maybe we just happen to have someone who's lost their full-time job and maybe has some comparable experience. Maybe that's a unicorn, but we may just want to communicate it out because it would be a shame to overlook that if there was that in town.
Yeah, I'm thinking. I think we could do that. I think it is, I had previous local government experience even coming into this job, but it is a different type of job to be a town manager than even to work in other local government positions. So just sort of not saying it can't be done, but I think it would just make it harder for whoever that person is.
Yeah, I hear you. And I would still say that, the best person for the job, whomever that might be, would be the choice.
Yeah, right. Yep.
Well, this is Phil. To Dan's point, will this be publicly advertised?
I think some of that depends on, looking at our contracting procedures, for example, the dollar threshold, so the hourly rate of the person makes a difference in that. There's obviously we've got a time-sensitive issue here, that we can't wait too long either. But, I think it may be.
Just from a promoting diversity standpoint, if we could possibly post it publicly, I think that would be ideal.
Okay.
I would agree. I certainly think it wouldn't hurt. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for letting us know, though, Andrea, and it's great that you have a plan and, duly noted. It's not like this is like a sweet, permanent, long-term gig, right? It's a stopgap position. So really, if you can actually just simply find someone who is a good match, we're certainly not gonna. I wouldn't imagine we're gonna get in your way.
Okay. Excellent. Okay. Any other questions? Otherwise, my plan will just be to keep you all informed as as this moves along.
Sounds good to me.
No questions from me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Andrea. We're under updates now. It's 8:22, and I guess I start with the SRTS project. Dan, Councilmember Simon sent a few questions, and I think I can try to address them briefly here, if that's okay. He wanted to know, do we have an update opinion from the town attorney regarding remedies we may have regarding charging Patriot for delays? And I have reported to him that, yes, I have talked with him, our town attorney. It occurred after we had just sent the time extension request from Patriot into District 3 for their review and approval. And so things were sort of in the air, contingent on that. And now that that did not get approved, not for any reason other than bureaucratic process and the timing of the fallout, if you will, of the subcontractor and all the other mayhem that sort of erupted in mid-May, we realized that that time request was, OBE, overtaken by events, and it wasn't going to stand anyway. So I have some other questions now, and perhaps even some options that I have spoken to State Highway about, and I also need to go back and pick up with Ron, our town attorney, about some of the new developments. So I plan to get back to him this week. The other question is, do we have an updated schedule? So no, we don't. I hope we have one maybe tomorrow. I have asked for it repeatedly. I asked for it again today. I was told that it would be here tomorrow. I'm not sure about that. So that's kind of all I can say about that. They know that we want this done as soon as possible. I had told them August 31st is when I want it done. And they have said that there will be a photo op finish by August 31st, but how they're going to do it, I haven't seen it, and I've asked for it. So maybe I'll have something tomorrow that will give me encouragement that they can actually do it. The third question was, what answer do we give to residents when they ask why they don't see work taking place 5 days a week. And I've been telling residents that as we had all feared, that this, because of this size of this job, it's relatively a small construction job. And given where it started, that it could become a backfill job where the other subcontractors who are on this project are taking other work, bigger money projects and trying to fit us in between, which of course is not what we want. And again, Patriot knows this, State Highway knows this. So that's been part of the problem. The other problem is that they've said the subs don't want to bring crews to our construction site if there isn't already a full day's worth of work for them, because they're losing money. And then because each subcontractor has its own specialty and place in this project, they have to wait on each other. So you can see the domino effect of just how difficult this is. If they're out all doing different jobs, different places, not being coordinated with Patriot, and they don't want to come in for a small job. And Marisa's remark is noted during her resident presentation about the asphalt, which is sort of in the same thing. There's not enough work to bring in an asphalt truck and a crew for a whole day unless they can get more linear feet. And so I will try to go back. I will go back to Patriot and see if they could bring that subcontractor in and just do the Claremont piece and not wait to finish even Montrose. And I'll see what I can get done on that, and I'll let y'all know. So that's what you can say. It's a small construction project in comparison to other construction jobs. Subcontractors are putting us sort of in a back burner area, which is not appropriate, but this is what happens in construction. And they don't want to commit a crew if there isn't a full day's worth of work. So all of this is in discussion. We shall see what this schedule looks like if I get it tomorrow, because, other than Patriot saying you all guys have to report and take no other jobs, it really is up to Patriot to get it done. So I don't know how much leverage they have.
It's kind of surprising they're going that way, because it's not uncommon for construction. You have all the sequencing issues, and you got to figure out how to economically get it done with sequencing. And usually the prime contractor has some sort of breach of contract control over their subcontractors. They don't want to be held to a contract by an owner of a place and then have their subcontractor not show up, and then they're become in default. So usually they'll try to protect themselves. So, a little surprised they're not playing that card.
Well, Stephen, they've certainly been told that they are going. I'm holding back payment on the May invoice to see progress this week continuing, because we just basically started a reboot here since they were off somewhere else working for a week and a half, some of them. And I'll be holding off June's payment until we're closer to getting the Montrose done. And I've told them about the likelihood of imposing a liquidated damages fines if they're not done by August 31st. And so that'll be sort of the question I go back to Ron about is, what day can we actually use as the completion date? So,
Yeah.
and whether or not we can
It may
just
not-
start turning it up sooner, I don't think we can until we actually decide which date they're laid on. So
Yeah, it may not hurt to ask. May not hurt to ask Ron when you're in conversation with him about that kind of subcontractor contract issue, if it does show up in there, if it's the kind of thing that could be pushed to get Patriot to realize that they should be doing it anyway, and if they don't do it, you're going to do it. So, which I saw your message, which was pretty good to them the other day about that. So,
unfortunately, all the negotiations have been between Patriot and the subs. So I'm not privy to the real details. I can get their subcontracts and see what they look like.
But their contract. Okay.
No, we don't do anything with the sub. We don't even approve them. It's all that gets approved by us and State Highway is the percentage of disadvantaged business entity percent of total cost.
Okay.
That's all we get to see. And the total amount that they're negotiated with. We don't even see the profit margin or anything. But I'll go back and see if I can get the subcontracts. I actually need them for the audit, so maybe I can take a moment to be able to go through those and see what's in there. And I'll also ask Patriot if they have any leverage in there to apply. I don't know what they'll tell me, Stephen. It has been something I probably need to talk offline about, but I think I need some truth serum is what I think I need applied. Okay. I think, Jerry Lee, you had a question about the ramp on Shelley Court. I had sent a note to everybody on June 24th about what our solution was. And I did talk with the Lepores. Maybe they were a little disappointed that they couldn't get the sidewalk raised, but that was certainly not going to be in the plan. And they understood everything is really, it's compliant and we can still put in, we have Patriot to put in at Patriot's cost and the concrete contractor, subcontractors cost to install a vertical header curb along the ramp, because that's in the plan, and so that's the plan. And I'm told that would be done starting this Wednesday and Thursday. So I hope that's true.
So header curbs on the house side or the street side?
House side.
And can that, we talked about it a little bit in the field, is it possible to still shift that sidewalk to the house a little bit more so that strip between the curb and the sidewalk gets wider, therefore the slope between it gets flatter? So I think that was their concern, that it was a pretty harsh slope that's not really landscapable. I know landscapable is not a word, but.
Well, the sidewalk has been poured. So what's remaining is just the vertical curb. We did have to keep as close to ADA compliance rules as much as possible, and the sidewalk ramp pretty much fits that, even though we had to move the landing a little bit further up instead of right down at the corner of the curb where the sidewalk intersects with the road curb.
I'm not talking about ADA. I'm talking about taking the same profile
I know what you're talking about. I know what you're talking about. That's too late. Okay, we're not. It's already compliant. So that's kind of the point I'm making. We're not having them rip it up and then move it in further to the property owner. They wouldn't want that. This was the way it was decided. And as far as the 18-inch or 20-inch gap, which mirrors the same gap that's on the west side of the driveway, this one, and the west side is nicely landscaped with pachysandra and boulders. This one can equally be done that way. It's compliant as long as the ground behind the curb, the back side of the curb, is no lower than 6 inches from the top. And we certainly can do that. And then we're looking at maybe, like just a 2-inch there, little slope. So it
We could
definitely
probably move
meets
on.
compliance.
I thought the whole thing was coming out. I didn't realize that the sidewalk was staying. It was just being modified in place. So I thought the whole
Yeah.
thing was being redone. So it's a
No, you have to go
different
back
issue.
and read the June 24th email. I got quite detailed about it. You can see it.
Okay.
I talk about the two things we're dealing with. So that's what that one is. Is there any other questions? If anybody's interested, the excavation that occurred today has gone down to just past the 06 drive. Well, actually, it's past the Grefsheim's driveway. And they plan to finish the rest of that tomorrow, all the way up to Claremont, and where it begins to cross over to Montrose. Also, Save-A-Tree is supposed to come in tomorrow and maybe Wednesday. And then the concrete guys are coming in Wednesday and Thursday. We shall see. This is, I don't mean to be cynical or jaded, but you all know how many times I've said, this is what I'm told as far as schedule, and it doesn't come to fruition, so we shall see. And we're ready. We're ready to handle some penalties if we have to. So this is all coming to a climax here. No, I'm not going to go out for another RFP for another general contractor. That would be way too long with State Highway. It hasn't even been an option to discuss. I had talked with State Highway if there's any funding to pay for a project manager or bringing somebody in from any one of their field sites. So all that is still part of a conversation that I hope to have tomorrow if State Highway gets their other information. I can tell you that the candidate that I have been speaking about is still interested. But what remains to, be answered here is really from the council about what kind of projects are we really going to commit to in the near future to make this, something that would work for somebody to come in and manage, even the end part here of the Safe Routes to School project, as well as any other construction projects we have going. And that is something I'd like to kind of hear from all of you council members about that. Let me also just add another perspective to it is with Andrea out, and if we are pursuing other projects like other sidewalks to get done, street repaving, stormwater, then I think it would be extremely beneficial to have a project manager involved. And I'd like to say that as far as SRTS goes, we're not talking about just a project manager. We're talking about a project manager / construction, field oversight, construction, / owner's rep. So there's several different kind of functions involved in those. So it's not just somebody who's going to be on the site at 8 hours a day or 7 hours a day or 6 hours a day. There's a lot of paperwork that is involved in this project, and it's not even caught up. And a lot of it is in the hands of Patriot. I'm trying to get it from them. So, and then it's on me in the town to submit monthly paperwork. And we need to always be checking the numbers and the quantities of materials delivered. And if they jive, there's been mistakes. So it's far more than any of you can imagine, really.
This is Dick Pratt. Am I unmuted?
Yes.
Kaki, if I could just say one thing, which I wasn't going to interrupt, except from what you said about the schedule, I think it's important that I do. As you may know, I really haven't been able to go out and watch what's been going on, but I did get a chance to look late this afternoon. And that section there between the Greshams and the Conlons, it just looked to me like there's a lot of possibility of ending up with a lot of straight sections and curves and so forth on the sidewalk that don't bear any kind of relationship to the curve of the street, such that that section. And I just bring that up, that somebody needs to watch that really closely over the next couple of 3 days here, if they go on the schedule you're talking about.
Right. Thanks, Dick. They haven't framed up the sidewalk yet. And obviously they also haven't framed up the curb and gutter in there yet. They've only excavated. So all that framing, forming up, will be done starting Wednesday, and we'll have a better look at that. But nothing's been changed against the plans. So yeah, we'll keep an eye on it.
Well, the plans had it going past the over the top of the catch basin, and it looks like that's been modified, and I'm not going to go there.
No, it has not. The sidewalk will be going over the slab that sits atop the road inlet. They're not taking it off yet because it's being formed, cast. It's a form cast. It hasn't been delivered. So that will get a new top, and that will be part of the sidewalk.
Oh, well, I must have misunderstood then because of where they put that padding down to prevent erosion. In any case, that's a difficult area that will require, a close watch.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So what's left, I'd love to hear from council members about where you think we may want to go in terms of future construction projects. If you have any idea, you've heard from Andrea, and she'll go into it further, I guess, but we are looking at a substantial carryover into FY21. Not that we definitely don't want to spend it all, but there is money there for projects as well as a project manager.
Before we talking about
I'm sorry. Let's ask. I'm sorry. I don't know who's speaking. I know Stephen's voice. Who else is asking a question? Give me your name.
This is Chris Keller.
Okay, Chris. Thank you. We're going to let the council members ask questions first. So, hold your question, Chris. Hold your question.
This is with respect with SRTS.
Hold your question, Chris. Stephen, can you go ahead and ask your question, please?
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to kind of clarify kind of what you have in mind, or ask you to clarify what you have in mind.
Mm-hmm.
Sounding like a full-time position, and then kind of finding work for this person to do it, which I think was a little bit of a step behind where it was before. I thought it was like a targeted thing to finish out SRTS. I guess my previous feedback before was that all the projects I project manage, usually we have a third-party project manager is very targeted. It just handles, those projects part-time. It's unusual for me to see like a full-time person. So I was curious what you have in mind.
Right. I didn't say full-time. I think, it remains to be seen whether it's a 30-hour arrangement or not. I don't know whether this candidate would be interested in a 40-hour. And then as we have with the other temporary backfill for Andrea, about the paid benefit question. I did make it clear, although it was stated incorrectly or not completely correct in the last bugle, that this wasn't just about the SRTS. This was also mentioned in the context of being available for these other projects. And so it kind of goes back to that, to the council members, because I don't know where this person what he would agree to. If it's just for 5 weeks, he may not agree to it. If he knew there was more projects, and then as I've just said, with Andrea being out, a temp person being in the office, that will take a lot of my time, and having this other person available, again, if it's 30 hours, I don't know, to handle all the other projects. It's worth just knowing kind of where people stand, where council members stand on that. And if it's too soon, I appreciate that. If you really aren't sure,
Hey, Khaki, this is Mario. I'm a little confused because I don't think you can bundle this together. I look at it as like this is a project by project basis, and I think it's premature to say what kind of person we would want to bring in for the additional work. We're not even there yet, right? In terms of stormwater, we have a lot of work to do before we can think about that. The other thing is, why does it have to be an employee? Why can't we hire a contractor who just works on as an outside contractor that doesn't?
Oh no, I never said an employee. I'm sorry if you've gotten that impression. This is
you mentioned
not
hours, because you mentioned benefits and hours.
Sure.
That's why I was confused.
So yeah, there's labor rules, and Andrea can speak to them if you want, but we don't have to get into that right now. But the labor rules are that if you, and it came out under the Affordable Care Act, that if you have somebody who's putting in more than 30 hours worth of time, that they are entitled to benefits. Now, I'm well aware that this candidate doesn't need the benefits, so it's a question of whether a waiver is accepted or if we just do 30 hours. So it has nothing to do with it's not on payroll as an employee. It's a contract.
Okay, that's my bad. Okay, that's good. Thanks for the clarification, Khaki. Thank you.
Okay, but I think your point is, I certainly understand your point, Mario, as well as Stephen, that it should probably be a project by project case. It's just that it really does it does help justify a position, or not a position, the contract, because I would need to let the person know that anything after this is up in the air. And of course, maybe that person will not be interested. But he may not be interested if it's only 30 hours per week too. I don't know.
Khaki,
I'm just trying to get a sense from all of you.
Yeah, this is Dan. I'll just give you my 2 cents. As far as any other project, I don't think I would be in favor of starting anything. My feeling would be like, it's July 13th now. If let's just say, Patriot's either going to end up in a massive lawsuit with us, or they're actually going to finish. If they finish by August 31st, by the time we actually find a project manager, it sounds like that project could be over or could be in court. Either way, I'm not sure exactly what the project manager would do, although I'm in support of a project manager for that if there's work being done. But for everything else, other sidewalks, stormwater management, building a Mars rover, anything, I would only be in support of us using our time between now and Andrea's return, maternity leave, to gather information, get bids, plan budgets, understand the financial impact of the pandemic on the town budget. I'd rather carry that overage over for a while and not feel compelled to spend it. and then, put ourselves in position. Andrea adds to her family. That's awesome. We wake up in January or February with, plans, estimates, priorities for what we want to do, a good financial understanding of if the town budget is really going to take a whack from the pandemic stuff, and then go forward at that point. I think the thought of taking on more projects and actually beginning anything while we're struggling to show, while we're currently showing it's hard for us to finish the one that's on the books, I would rather just wait and keep all our focus trained on the thing we got to complete. That's my 2 cents. And of course, I'm always open to anything else, but that's my current view.
Okay, I appreciate that. I'll respond briefly if I may. There's nothing difficult or time consuming to bring this candidate on if we wanted to go ahead and start that person even this week. I agree that if there's nothing forthcoming after whatever time it takes for Patriot to finish, then, it may not be worth it. But I can tell you this, if this still goes beyond August 31st, which so far there is nothing that's been said that is now believable, that I'm not going to keep doing this. And it would be to my benefit and to the town to have somebody help come in and manage the SRTS project with those three kind of functions that could somebody mute their phones, please? I don't know what the noise is.
That's Darth Vader.
Yeah. Anyway, so, with those three functions in mind, the only other aspect I'd like to speak to quickly, Dan, on your comments about future projects is maybe sidewalks, maybe road repaving. Those may be more back burner if you'd want to go that way, to you and all council members. But I can tell you that Rokeby stormwater, that one isn't going to wait till the winter. That one has been going on for years. And Mara, I know you don't know the whole history, but that one, we already know what can get done. We have a viable solution if you and Chuck look at it and the residents are fine. Because we certainly have the money. We never spent it last year. That one has to get done because of what's been going on. And the flooding down there, it's just washing away everybody's properties. So I'm not going to suggest that you wait until January for that one. That's the only one I'd say that council needs to approve to get done before Christmas. Anyway, thank you. That, if nothing else, then I would.
Yeah, this is Jerry Lee.
Yeah, Jerry, go ahead.
So I think we would be obligated to just look at this as a first project, because otherwise you'd have to go through a full competitive procurement process if you were looking at a long-range employment for this contract. And even still, I would like to see a more open procurement process. I'm not sure what candidate you've been talking about tonight, but the candidate you spoke about in June was fired by Patriot, which to me is a conflict of interest, and we shouldn't even consider that candidate.
Well, actually, Jerry Lee, I have to disagree with you on a couple things. One, he wasn't fired, and that has its own actual legal ramifications. He was let go because of a major house cleaning. So it wasn't for any wrongdoing, okay? Secondly, I am very, very, very familiar with procurement, and it doesn't need a full and open. Okay, there's lots of different procurement thresholds that the state of Maryland and the federal government have as standards and their acquisition laws. So just to say that broadly, that it needs a full and open competition, I think you're not really aware then of all the
No, what I was
remedies.
referring to,
Okay.
Kathy, is our town's procurement process. If we wanted this project manager position to cover multiple projects over a long span of time, we'd most likely end up going over the threshold for a sole source. That was what I was referring to. But on the whole, I think just going to one candidate who was recently let go by the contractor that we want them to oversee, I think that's still a conflict of interest, whether they were let go for other reasons or let go because they were fired. I still think it's the same problem.
Well, I again disagree. Respectively, Jerry Lee, this person knows the town very well. He comes from Somerset, so he also knows what small towns and small government are like. He knows this project inside and out. He knows all the plans, the specs, the contracts. He even knows some of the people. And there will be a change in personnel again this week. And, he's the one that tipped me off that it's going to happen. And I have verified that with Patriot. Whether that really is true from Patriot's mouth, I don't know. He has also tipped me off on some of the other issues that have come up even as of last week that a Patriot has not told me about, and I've had to press and extract information from them because I knew. So he's a pretty credible candidate, and he knows how to do the job, and he knows what the town wants and needs. And I have all the confidence in the world that he would deliver. But that said, he may not want to do this if it's very short term, and I'm not going to hold that to anybody. If it just means I have to gut this out, I'll gut it out. But after August 31st, done. So you better believe it, I'm going to put the hammer down.
I had helped along the way in parts, and I'm perfectly willing to continue to help in. So if that helps to continue to pitch in, and Phil's been pitching in, I think Mario's even been pitching in, so I can increase a little bit on what I was doing if that would help. And then as far as the project manager, I think it just sounds different than what I'm typically dealing with, because at work I handle probably about seven or 8 or 10 projects in construction at any given time, and they're almost always, when they have a project manager, it's a third-party project manager company that gets hired, and they assign somebody from their company, because it's usually not a full-time gig, and those are on projects that are 10, 20, 50 times as big as our sidewalk project. So that's where it's like I have that disconnect there, kind of feeling like how is this more than like a 1 day a week job to go and check and have some meetings and then review the schedule and make points.
Seriously?
And kind of review and give you a digest. Yes, very seriously.
Seriously? 1 day a week?
Yes.
Okay, let's not even go any further, because Stephen, I'm sorry, you do not know what's going on out there, okay? And you are not familiar with all the state requirements, the bureaucratic state highway requirements. So there is more than just being on site, and I tried to describe that earlier. So it's a combination of project management, construction, field oversight, because there are things that aren't getting done, folks, unless I'm there, even today, okay? And while we have the best intention of a town inspector, a field inspector that we've hired, and he's better than the last one, things still get missed, or people aren't reading the specs. So, you just don't understand. And I don't understand it either, Stephen. I mean, I don't understand why these people do not know the plans and the notes and the specs. Yeah. I just don't get it.
I haven't really experienced anything quite like it myself. And one thing that also is a little bit unusual on this one is the typical arrangement is you have we used to call it the AOC, it's architect and owner and contractor, and the way those three kind of work in a triangle. This one happens to be EOC with engineer, owner, architect. But usually engineers are very heavily involved, like reviewing drawings, reviewing things on site. And it seems like this one, much less than any, or much less than my expectations of what I'm used to kind of like seeing. And I wonder if that is a thing that could have been helping us all along to pick up the slack where the inspector is not picking it up.
Well, it's to some degree I think, experience of this one field inspection service. I know that the new vice president for project management, he's higher paid person at Patriot, doesn't know hardly anything. He's only been on the job, not our job, only been with the company 3 months. And there's a lot that is being demonstrated that he doesn't know, or don't really want to get into that. And I don't want it published in the Bugle either. If anybody would just stop the background, I want to repeat what I just said. I don't want what I just said printed in the Bugle. I think this is probably where we need to maybe go into a closed session to talk more, because it is about some procurement sensitivities, and I don't want it getting. There's more I could be discussing with you, and I'm not going to get into that unless we go into a closed session. So.
Yeah. Or would it help to just have an offline conversation?
Yeah. So, Kaki, here's Mario. I hear what you're saying, and here's what I'm thinking. I think obviously you've been expressing the frustration. We all hear it. We all know how hard you're working, and there's no question about it. Whether how things are working out. So if you feel strongly about a project manager, why don't you find out from this person what it's going to take, how many hours it's going to take, what kind of budget? I don't think the town council is ready to move forward with like a position beyond the school. Right. So
Okay.
why don't we just start there and say, look, this is what it's going to be, and if it works out great, then we know we have someone in mind for the next big project. But I think maybe, and
Okay.
I'm not ruling it out. I just want to get a sense of what it would cost and if there's money available to to bring someone like this on board.
Okay, I can do that, Mario. We'll see what happens, for sure. I can, like Andrea said, I mean, I do have some dollar range. And I'm trying not to do the 40-hour because we don't have the question about benefits and, whether or not it's just see how you do, how you perform. And then if it's good and we get this thing done, yes, maybe the town will be interested in you again. So absolutely, I've actually mentioned that before. So I'm fine. We'll take it with this first step, and see what happens. I'll let you all know. We definitely have the money. If it's for 5 weeks, it's a nominal amount, really, in light of everything else. I'm sorry, Chris Keller, you had a question.
Well, hey, hello.
Oh, who else is on? Is asking a question?
This is Phil. I'd like to try and get a comment in here if I could.
Oh, I'm sorry, Phil. Hold
for being snarky here.
Phil, go ahead.
So I see a couple things here. I see that there's probably something we need to talk to, you may need to talk to Ron about to find out about the whether or not you have to have the benefits, because I've never heard of that sort of thing with a contractor. I think the second thing is the conflict of interest that Jerry Lee brought up. Just to ask him if he thinks that there's a problem here. I mean, personally, I don't think so, but you just double check and see. Okay. And then I think if this will help drive this thing to conclusion much faster, I think it's probably well worth it. At the same time, we can try this person out, because we know for sure, like you said, we got to do the thing at Roca because it's causing damage. And, at some point somebody could come around and want to sue the town for, saying, hey, you guys are dragging your feet on this thing. It's something we need to do. And the sidewalks are something we're going to get some estimates from the engineer on. And once we get all that together with, the better number on what our carryover is, I think we need to take a look at, taking care of a few things like that. We can't promise the person anything, but I think it would be a good first time try it out job. I mean, if you're going to do contracting, that's kind of the way it works.
Okay. Yeah. I will. I'll vet this question of conflict of interest with Ron. See what he thinks. And your other points are certainly understood. I'm on board with all this. Everybody, really, the direction you want to go, it's fine by me.
With the benefits too, because I've not heard of that one. But I mean, I'm in favor of doing it if we can get this SRTF closed, by Labor Day. Well, I think that
Labor Day. I'm done. I'm done August 31st. So that's the way it's got to go.
Yeah.
And if it isn't, then
Oh.
you're right. You're right. Then it's not me. It'll be somebody else doing it.
I guess it's Phil and me. I'll have to cover it till Labor Day.
Right.
Okay.
So you never know.
Thank
But
you.
but yeah, if we can do that and get them moving.
Yeah, you made me think of something, Phil. I should let people, just as a sort of another piece of information on the stormwater, Mario, with a heads up, ears out. There has been talk by residents pursuing, and maybe I should back off, residents. There are people on the other side that are in the White Park, whatever it is, White Flint Park community right there on the other side, who have definitely said that they could be coming forward if we don't get something done. So it's not just residents, it's the people on the other side who are also being impacted by the flooding down there. Okay.
That's part of why I want to see the plans. I kind of want to see what the extent of it is all, and kind of see if there's any comments. I don't want to have comments and have it be too late. So I brought this up a couple times. So if we can figure out a way to share it, let's do it.
As Andrea said, Mario and Chuck have just got them. I don't even know if they've looked. And, Chuck, you've been on I believe you've been on the task force, Stephen. So obviously, at some point they're going to definitely want to bring everybody in and review these and share. So to get people's, idea, their thoughts about it. So I'm going to leave that to Mario and to Chuck.
We just don't want to cause
can I go
delay,
to Chris? Okay, can I go to Chris Keller now? Is anybody, or are there any other council members that want to ask questions?
If I could just throw in a second to one of the points that Dan made earlier, I think it's important to kind of really watch the economy over the coming time and not just overly rush certain things. I think, Kaki, you made a great point about Rokeby. That one's a separate thing, but or any of the stormwater things that are kind of a separate thing, because we're looking at Claremont as well. But I think it's good to do things right better than fast. So.
I don't think anybody disagrees with that. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely right. We're pretty fiscally minded, believe me. Okay, thank you. Chris, do you still have that question? Is it relevant? Because we're on a time clock here. I'm seeing we're over.
It referred to your observation earlier about the SRTS project and the fact that excavation was begun on Claremont by the Grefsheims. And I know you were out there today. They are using a machine to remove the old asphalt sidewalk, notwithstanding the fact that the plans very clearly call for handwork only around the tree roots of the existing mature willow oaks. Those are wonderful trees that will be injured by the machines. The plans clearly call for handwork. We want to save them. Can we possibly get them to follow the specs on that?
Yes, I have raised the same concern, but there's an echo here. Chris, the only way to get the asphalt up is to strip it. And so they're using a backhoe, and this is what happens. At least this is what's been happening. They lift it just a couple inches at most, and everybody's looking underneath to see if that asphalt is glued to any of the roots. And if they are, they stop. And so they keep going. They're peeling, all they're doing is peeling it back. They're not taking dirt out unless it's coming up with a, whatchamacallit, with a backhoe and the asphalt. But they're doing that very carefully. Then say the tree comes in, and that's what they're supposed to be doing tomorrow is now they're supposed to be going in, doing the hand digging, laying down the protection fabric, and they'll be air spading as well. So yeah, no, I mean, that's kind of how it's supposed to work. You can't move the asphalt otherwise. You can't do hand digging until the asphalt's out of the way. Okay. All right. Okay, I'm gonna say this. It is 9 o'clock, and I'd like to really keep everything brief from here on out. So, you know, I'm seeing traffic and parking, Black Lives, Town Hall, Town Code. I would like everybody to see if they can do something, you know, 5 minutes each, no more than 6 or 7, but let's go. Traffic and parking, Councilmember Schultz.
So basically, everybody's seen that we've put up the barriers and so forth, and the detour signs for extending Black Market, and that seems to be working out pretty well. So that was really the big thing I had there. The other thing is I just wanted to take a second to quick plug my other duty, which archives. Claire McDonald's going to be putting on a, along with the Citizen Association, is going to put on a WebEx event to discuss Garrett Park's history with regard to Black Lives and diversity, and so that is going to be coming up a week from today. It will be at 7 o'clock and at 7:30. It's going to be Monday, July 20th, and there'll be information on the website. But it's basically going to be a presentation in context with residents' views, perceptions, and actions towards people of color. Something not to miss. And that's it for me.
Great. That was going to be when, July 20th?
20th, a week from today.
Okay, super. I'm looking forward to that. Okay,
Yep,
I'll put in, I'm sorry, Phil, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, I just said 7 o'clock, not 7:30.
Yeah, okay,
like
7 o'clock. Good. We'll get that. Actually, I think it was posted on the website already, wasn't it, Andrea? Did it get put on the website yet?
Yeah. Yep,
okay.
It's on the website.
Yeah,
yep.
And we'll send, maybe, Phil, you could send it through the GP Town Forum?
Yes, I can do that.
And I'm going to just add something that I've gotten today. The Montgomery County Planning Department of Parks, Cultural Resources, and Department of Historic Preservation, they are conducting research, developing a comprehensive list of any county-owned streets and parks or facilities that have names, that hold names of people associated with the Confederates, Confederate sympathizers, or slaveholders. And they were just alerting the town of that we may be one of those areas that they're looking at. And as we know, we own our own streets, so it's not county owned, but we do have 2 parks, I think, at least in town that are county owned. So we'll find out. Maybe the Historic Preservation knows, can look into it, or with the archives. But you know, I don't know who Wells is, and maybe somebody does. But I don't want to talk about it right now.
Who's an early resident of town.
Right,
Exactly.
and whether that person had any was a Confederate sympathizer, you know, all that. So, and then the Waverly Wells Park. But again, so just letting you know that they may be contacting us further on that. And if there's anybody out there who knows any history of the naming of those, let us all know. It'd be great. Okay. Council members Grande and Bennett, Black Lives Matter and racial healing. How not to dismiss this, but how maybe we can get this.
This is Jerry Lee. So we have points for tonight. One was we had a previous request from a resident to allow them to do some artwork to cover the graffiti on the parking lot of Penn Place, the part of the property owned by the town. And Mario and I have discussed this and touched base with the Penn Place Art Committee, and they are willing to review a design if we approve that resident to cover the graffiti. And Mario and I are recommending approval of that action. That's the first item. The second item is that I sent an email with a link to the county bill that was introduced for police reform and minimum use of force policy standards. This would require the chief of police to review the policy for use of force and adopt minimum standards within 6 months. And we would like to send a letter of support for that particular county bill because that would have a specific impact in Garrett Park, since Montgomery County Police do have the jurisdiction within Garrett Park. So Mario and I are also recommending that we send a letter of support to the county for that particular regulation. So those are the 2 items we had for tonight. And we wanted to thank the Citizens Association for co-hosting the town meeting we had on this topic, and also going forward with having the workshop that they held. And I think they're also looking at some other potential activities. Mario, is there anything else that we should add?
No, I'm going to keep it short. I'm happy to talk to anyone that wants to reach out individually. You can contact me on my email. But no, Jerry Lee, you hit it right on, spot on. Thanks.
Thank you, both of you. And Jerry Lee, you said you'd be happy to draft the letter. Could you do that and circulate it for us?
Yes.
For us to look at?
Yeah, as long as there are no major objections from the council, I'll be happy to do that. Send it around within the next day or 2.
This is Phil. So I've got a couple comments on it. As much as I support it and everything, the things that I see are, first, this is just an introduction, so we don't even know what the real bill's going to say yet. Second, I haven't heard anything. I mean, maybe it's out there and I just missed it from the chief of police, whether the chief of police thinks it's a good idea, because, I mean, after all, you know, all those things are good, but we just have to make sure there's something that the police can also live with in terms of their own safety. And third, some of the things were very vague in it. I mean, there was the one about using deadly force, which says basically if there's any risk, you know, you can't use deadly force. Well, unfortunately, in many times, many situations, there's bystanders around. And if you say any risk, you've now basically said that, you know, police would be unable to use their weapons, whereas the bad guys could. So I'd like to see this thing, see what comes out as the actual bill rather than just the introduction, because I think it's going to get changed. I really do.
So the introduction does have the bill text as it was introduced. If we wait for the next version, it might already be passed.
But why would we want to recommend something that appears to have flaws in it?
Yeah, Phil, I'm not here to say. Sorry, go ahead.
There's no reason why we couldn't, you know, draft up something and then wait and see what comes out in a little bit before we do it, you know, before we send something in. But right now it appears to have some flaws in it.
Jerry Lee or Mario, do you think that you could get a hold of a chief of staff or staff member on the county council and find out a little bit more about if there's any proposed amendments to the language or anything like that going on before we absolutely jump on it?
Right. No, that's a valid question. I guess, Jerry, we can reconvene tomorrow morning and see if we can get someone in, you know, at the county level, and see. I mean, it's a valid concern, and you know, I don't entirely disagree, although some stuff's up for interpretation. I just think that the thought was there's an action, and I think that not just action, but it's the bills to me seem like most of it was moving in the right direction.
Yeah, the intent of it. Yeah.
But I you know, certainly, Phil, I hear you, and you know, there's no disputing what you're saying. So I'll see what I can dig up and see what kind of what the vibe is, if I can, even on the county level. Let's see where we go.
Okay, we appreciate that. Great.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I appreciate it. And I was going to say, I am looking at I was looking at the document that was dated June 16th, introduction. So maybe I've got an old document too. I don't know. But that was the one that that's the one that I found on the link.
Okay, Good. Yeah, check that out. Maybe it's a simple matter of there's been an updated version. We just don't have the link. Okay. Stephen, how quickly can you give a few words on the town hall renovation plans? It is 9:20.
Okay, let's shoot for 9:22 or less. So I had some discussions with some architects. Didn't seem terribly interested in the project I was proposing until I told them more and more, and then they were very interested. So I wanted to gauge some interest, putting together an RFP to move forward with what we really can do with the budget that kind of we have that's been kept for town hall, and that would be to hit one of the more urgent early parts that wouldn't hold up other planning, which we've talked about before, is study the facade and put together drawings to replace things that need replacing, fix things that need fixing, fix the windows, find a way to insulate it potentially from the outside, or at least make a plan to do it later from the inside, so on and so forth, so we can get that facade on the historic parts buttoned up. I think the non-historic parts should be just kind of left for the other plan, which are the greater plan, which is in development. And as discussed before, the idea is in the fall to have either another meeting like we had before to move that further, to figuring out how extensive a renovation everybody in town really wants, and where we're going to come up with the $500 to $1 million plus that it would take to do all those various options. We just don't have that money now, so that's sort of the two wavelengths that's moving on. So if there are any questions or comments.
Okay, that's great. I'm sorry to have to do this, but I need to go back to the item that Jerry Lee and Mario were talking about with Black Lives Matter and the graffiti on the Penn Place parking lot. I'm remiss in not asking for all council members if they're all okay with this, that we go ahead and allow the artist to cover the graffiti work. Is there any objection to that? Not that this is a formal vote of action, but I definitely want to hear if everybody's okay with that. I didn't really get a pulse of that. So is everybody okay with that?
This is Dan, fine with me.
Okay. Yeah, and Stephen and Phil?
I was fine with it before when we talked about it. I guess I was picturing it as like a sort of a temporary thing that it would eventually wear away, but it will be recorded for archives. It wouldn't be like a permanent installation.
That's correct.
Okay. And Phil, you're okay with it, right?
Yeah, I'm fine with it. Yep, for sure.
Okay, great. I just wanted to close the loop on that. Thank you, and I'm sorry to have to interrupt. Okay, Stephen, it sounds like there's nobody has questions at this time with your thoughts or steps forward on the town hall. Can we go to, how about town code zoning?
Yeah, so I haven't had a chance to dig into like the bigger thing we really got to dig into, which is kind of cleaning up all the 3 tiers of land use and including attached accessory dwelling units, because that's a big task. It's going to be at least a fall before I can kind of get into that. The one thing I do want to move forward on in Land Use Advisory Committee, and I talked about this a little while back, is to push forward on some analysis was done on corner lots that could be classified as a side street. There's very few of them in town, and so most corner lots are not this. So if you have a house that faces a street or a property that faces a street on both sides of it, you don't qualify for this, but you'd have to be able to qualify in the county definition for this. But to give some relief, propose some relief for those homes where right now, if you have, say, a 50 by 200 foot lot, you have a 10-foot setback on one side, you have a 30-foot setback on the other, which means you can basically put a trailer that's 10 feet wide in the zone that's left. So what I'm proposing is to relax that. So if you have that kind of a condition, you could go with what the county would allow, which would be 15 feet. That would give you like 25 foot. That's more buildable. So I'm trying to look in a little bit more detail about what kind of cans of worms that could open up. And I think one of the things to consider is if you're going and allowing that extra, maybe something else is reduced, it kind of balances it out. And it might be that the most sensible is the height of the building to be less than the 35 foot that's allowed. So I want to discuss that further with land use committee and propose that ordinance change in our next meeting, which would be September.
Okay,
So I
great.
just wanted to throw it out there as kind of something that's coming.
Okay, great. Good to know. Thank you for working on that, Stephen, and with your task force. Okay, thank you. We are at 9:25, which puts us right here at the town manager's report. Andrea, could you give us some update?
Yep, you bet. Okay, the June revenues, operations, and capital budgets are at expected levels, and the total revenues and expenses were within projections. As I referenced earlier, the preliminary June close has a little over $420,000 right now, but we do know that there's still more FY20 bills that are coming in. I have some in hand, in fact, so that will be a little less than that. But once the final carryover is known, that will be communicated to council, and we'll figure out our next steps. See, there's one building permit, and I actually would like to amend my own manager report to add the address. I neglected to put that in. So at the very end of this new town building permits section, after the words East Side request, it should say at 4705 Argyle.
4705 Argyle?
Yes.
Okay,
yep.
Thank you.
For COVID-19, I gave some updates there for those who are interested. It had been requested that I kind of put in writing why the traffic barriers are up at Penn Place. I know that they're ugly, but they're to keep everybody safe, so that's in writing in my manager's report. Let's see, one thing that's not in here that's recent was that the county at the end of last week released guidance to local governments on CARES Act reimbursement. But first I'll need to do FEMA reimbursement, which is quite a process, I'm told. So that will be a priority in the coming weeks. We have until I think late November or December to do that, but just wanting to get that process started now so that either whoever's backfilling me or Khaki, making sure that you have that paperwork as well, whatever's been submitted.
Okay.
Town office and maintenance highlights. The main two things to point out here is that we have a list right now with the tree contractor. I'm waiting for a quote. As soon as I have the quote, Jerry Lee and Jenny will see that, but waiting for tree pruning and removals. So there'll be many of those in the coming weeks. And then a new HVAC unit was installed at Penn Place. So this sort of forced our hand. We were hoping to phase in various things related to HVAC in Penn Place. We knew that we'd have some replacement costs in the coming fiscal year, but we didn't think we'd have it like on July 1, having a $9,000 expense. So, but it's nice that it's working. It was very hot in the town office for a while there.
It sure was.
So that's
thanks for getting that done. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, and I had, I was grateful to have George kind of helping manage the HVAC person that was in doing that. So, but that's it for me, my manager's report.
Andrea, this is Jerry Lee. I have a question.
Sure.
With the opening of the parks, are you also opening up the basketball court there at Penn Place and the playground at the community center?
The playground at the community center, that would not be my call. I didn't close it. I kind of left that up to the nursery school to decide. Cambria Park has been reopened, and honestly, I hadn't really thought anything about basketball. I have to actually figure out if the county closed that or if we closed that initially.
You mean if there's a contact, if it's kind of a contact sport, contact activity? Because certainly the Wells Park is now open. There's no orange fencing, so I would expect then all county kind of facilities, athletic facilities might be open.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll have to look. I hadn't looked at any of the latest stuff with an eye thinking about basketball. So.
Yeah, contact. Okay. All right. We'll check on that, Jerry Lee. Okay. Not to rush off on this. Is there any last point or remark by council members? Okay, we see how quick this is. All right, I am now adjourning the meeting. Thank you. It's just about 9:30. Everybody have a good night.
Thanks, you too.
Night.
All right.
Night.
Stay safe, be well. Bye-bye.